And we are back with another great episode of Liam Picks Fights Live. I am very excited today to be joined by two of my friends. We got the Canadian Takeover. We got Z's MMA and GordoGambles in the building to help me break down UFC Vegas 34. We've got Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, big middleweight main event. It's one that I'm looking forward to. And this is a card that I know that these boys are looking forward to breaking down. So without further ado, we're going to pull them in. First off, Z's MMA, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Good to be back on, Liam. Doing all right. I'm looking forward to talking about some fights and some betting opportunities with you and Gordo.
Absolutely, man. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for being here. And then we've got Mr. GordoGambles. Gordo, how you doing today, boss?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, boss. Good to have you in the building. So, boys, what I'm going to ask is that when we have one guest going, we will mute ourselves. I'm going to kick it to Z first, and we are going to start from the bottom of the card here today. We've got Ramiz Brahimaj and Sasha Palatnikov kicking off the card at 170 pounds. The UFC has a habit for making those fun, exciting matchups to kick off a card. Where they want to see some violence, they want to see some action. They normally put together something low level and fun to get the night started off right. And I think that they've done a good job in this matchup. Z, we'll kick it to you first, man. How do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, I think you said it. Am I muted? No, I'm good, eh? I think you said it best. It's a fun lower level fight. As far as a betting perspective goes, I am also leaning with Ramiz Brahimaj, but not enough to want to bet him as a favorite. Sasha Palatnikov seems pretty hittable on the feet, and I don't know. I just don't really love his process. You know, he's a guy who came into the UFC as a huge dog to Kosi, was able to weather a storm and get that win, but Kosi's kind of a front runner. Ramiz is as well. He does slow down, so maybe Sasha makes it close. Betting perspective for me is this is just a fun one to see where these guys are at. Ramiz had a pretty tough debut against Max Griffin. His ear was obviously sliced from his head. But these things happen in MMA. So yeah, I'll take Ramiz tentatively for a pick, but not a huge amount of interest in this fight for me.
I hear you, man. And I kind of went deep on this because I thought it was an interesting enough fight. You know, Brahimaj, it's not that easy to find all of his tape. I was able to sift through and find a pretty decent amount of it. And he's got tricky submission skills, but he kind of sells out all in on his punches. And so he seems like a Kosi type mold of somebody who could throw themselves out. And I did see the Pipe Vargas fight. He looked good early, but he can't sustain a wrestling pace if he brings in that kind of offense. And so I think that it could lead to him having, a kind of late collapse in this fight. He could be looking good early. And that's why it's a fight that I didn't want to target necessarily. And even, I looked at the under 2.5 rounds. I looked at the fight doesn't go to decision because I thought that those were both pretty likely. But I think that they're priced pretty appropriately. I think if you got in early when it was minus 125 on the under 2.5 rounds, I think you got a really good look there because I do think that this is more than likely to finish. And we know that welterweight fights finish greater than 50% of the time on average. So I don't think that was a bad look, but I think as it approaches minus 145, minus 150, I believe it's up to on betonline.ag. Currently, we have the price is hanging at minus 140 for Ramiz Brahimaj, plus 120 Sasha Palatnikov with minus 145 on the under 2.5 rounds, plus 115 the comeback on over 2.5. Gordon, is there anything that you like from a gambling perspective here?
I think I'm a bit higher on Brahimaj than you guys. His ground game, I think, is really going to be the difference in this. I don't think that he showed it all. Well, we know he didn't show it all in his first fight. I mean, he tried to stand with Griffin. It didn't work out very well, and his ear tells a story on that one. But it was all the fight tape I watched. He did shoot for those takedowns. He did get that ground game going early, and it did pay off well for him. And we just saw Palatnikov be finished recently. I don't think that his ground game or his game in general is that good defensively or at all. I don't think he's going to be in the UFC that long, if I'm being completely honest. I think he has a great resiliency, and he's able to battle through and win fights because he wears out other people and because he does what he does to Luis Kosi. But when it comes to a fresh fighter, a fresh Ramiz Brahimaj who will have the clear advantage on the ground, if he's smart, will shoot, I think that it's him all day. The problem is, I'm not sure I'm going to get him to shoot right away. That's the problem, because I know he has fallen in love with his hands a bit. It's not exactly what I want to see, because he does have such a clear advantage, and we've seen Platnikov give up his back and be choked out. So I think that on paper, it should be Brian Maj all day. I did cap him a bit higher than I got the line. I did lock him in for a play earlier. So I am on Brian Maj for this weekend, just because I think he does have that round 2, round 1 submission upside. I think that's the way I'm going to call it. But I would not be surprised if Platnikov weathers him out and finishes him late. I do like your shot on the fight doesn't go to decision. I did look at it, missed line movement, as you said. But I think this is one where you either got a great submission artist early or a guy who weathers the storm and finishes a guy who tires late.
I would tend to completely agree with you there. So I also would edge Ramiz Brahimaj here. I think that he is the deserving favorite, but I think it should only be ever so slight. And just because of, the lack of awareness that we saw in that Max Griffin fight, like you said, he didn't attempt a takedown. Like I didn't see a level change of any sort throughout that fight. And he was getting picked apart more and more clearly as the fight went on. So it just seemed like a lack of self-awareness. And he's lost decisions before, so it seemed like he was en route to losing a decision there if he didn't get finished anyway. So just some causes for concern. And also the Pipe Vargas fight is from a completely different fighter. I slept an hour and 15 minutes last night, so I just realized that when I look back at the Tapology. But moving right along the card, boys, because we are not all that interested in betting that fight, we've got Roosevelt Roberts and Ignacio Bahamondes. I know that you've been high on Ignacio in the past, C. I know that you regretted that one, unfortunately. But I do think that, I could see where you were coming from. He's got a great frame for the lightweight division. Wasn't able to make weight last time out. But obviously, he's got a massive frame. He won a welterweight fight on the Contender Series, granted against a guy who looked like he was, misplaced at best in that weight class. But we'll kick it to Gordo, I guess, on this one first. How do you feel about this fight? And, what are your thoughts on this fight from a betting perspective?
I think this is one where recency bias has really taken advantage of this one, because Roosevelt Roberts isn't favored as much as he has been in his recent fights, even though I think he does have a very distinct path to victory again. It's very similar to the first fight. I think that when it comes to defense, Ignacio Bahamondes doesn't have much of it. I think he's very, very hittable. But again, where he thrives is he's a big fighter and he's able to keep people at range. He's got great kickboxing. He's good at what he does. The problem I have is Roosevelt Roberts 2 fights ago was a great prospect of the UFC with just low fight IQ. And I think that's still where he is. I think people are overlooking the way that Kroom was able to finish him. I think that he looked past Kroom himself, and that's why he was clubbed and subbed the way he was. But I think that he still has the advantage in this fight. I mean, I also took Bahamondes his last time out. I think that he is a good fighter as well. Like, great frame, great kickboxing. But we haven't really seen his ground game. He hasn't fought the top level of competition either. So when you look at a guy, Roosevelt Roberts, who's paid his dues in the UFC, who's gone through fights with Jim Miller, even though he wasn't very smart in that fight, or Bin Klimtsov, he knows what he's doing. And I think that in this fight here, I think that his ground game is going to be a difference again. I mean, I'm pretty high on my BJJ guys. As you can tell, I like my wrestlers. But if you look at tape, I mean, Bahamondes shoots takedowns with his neck so wide open, and that's all I could think about when I'm taping this is Roosevelt Roberts has a great guillotine. And I think that if he shoots the same way he did against McDessie or in a lot of his regional fights, that it could end up the wrong way. You've also seen Roberts be able to flow really well on top. So I think that on the feet, when you have 2 guys who are as hittable as they are, and they're so close, and you have a guy who's just as if they're even on the feet and you have a guy with such a big advantage on the ground, I'm going to lean with the guy on the ground. So my pick is going to be Roosevelt Roberts by submission. I have not bet it yet, but that's what I'm leaning for right now. What about you guys?
Well, I would just say this, man. I think that Ignacio Bahamondes is a true fighter, man. I think so many people would have quit in that McDessie fight, whereas he kept coming forward and honestly taking a licking. But I thought that by that 3rd round, he was, sort of holding his own, getting some respect back, working his way back into the fight. And that was pretty impressive to me. Granted, it was a clear loss, but I think it ended up being 29-28 across the board. So it was, or in fact, I think it was a split decision for McDessie. So I didn't think Ignacio should have won that fight, but he put out a credible effort against somebody who's very, very talented. I think McDessie would probably smash Roosevelt Roberts. So, man, I think that this is an interesting fight. I think I agree with you in the sense that that grappling upside is definitely there, but I've also seen Roosevelt Roberts, struggle to get and hold control when he starts pursuing his takedowns. I've seen him tire a bit in fights where he pursued his takedowns aggressively. So that would be my causes for concern on the Roberts side. But I really have, some concerns about Bahamondes. I haven't seen much on tape from a grappling perspective, and an unknown is always something that I don't want to get caught out over my skis betting on. So, Z, how do you feel about this?
Well, thank you for highlighting the fact that I lost betting on Ignacio Bahamondes versus that bum. No, but I also lost betting on Roosevelt Roberts at chalk. So this is just PTBD all over this fight. I don't want to touch it. Let these two fight it out between each other. As far as Gordo's take on Roberts by submission, I just checked it. It might be a good read, but plus 300 isn't enough for me to take it. I would want like 600 or something crazy, but I'll lean with Roberts. He is the favorite. Another easy pass for me, though. I don't want any part of the betting on this fight or betting either of these guys until I've seen something more from them. And it was a split decision versus McDessie for Bahamondes, but he really just did not use his range very well at all. And I was kind of like, I could kind of see that going into the fight, but I was like, well, he still has the range. So at least, even if he's fighting like a smaller guy, like he's not fighting super on the outside, but he'll be able to use that length. But he just couldn't use it at all and was getting blasted. So big pass for me as far as a betting perspective goes. I will lean with Roberts ever so slightly.
Well, I want to shout out to the people. We got 13 live viewers right now with us, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by and checking this out. But I wanted to just add the one other note that Ignacio Bahamondes, man, in that last fight, he showed me something else, which was that I thought he was actually doing well for 2 minutes, and then he got hurt so badly, like legs started to go twice, and he was still, showing that kind of heart and determination. And he worked his way back into the fight by round 3. So I was like, man, maybe it's not that he's that bad. Maybe he got caught, got clipped early, and then put on a poor performance the rest of the way, didn't look like himself. I think he does have the defensive liabilities, but I think that if this is a prolonged striking affair, I do think that there's a slight class difference, and we're going to see Bahamondes probably light him up a little bit more. But because of the hitability, man, not going to get involved on either side. I think it's going to be a fun fight, though. Again, it's one of those fights where we're trying to discern what do we have here with these guys. Roosevelt Roberts, a lot of people have been high on him. I think the market's been too high on him historically, but maybe this is the right kind of correction spot for him where he gets to exploit a ground advantage as opposed to being at a ground disadvantage in some of these recent fights against the likes of Jim Miller. But moving right along, boys, we've got a light heavyweight slot fest. Everybody's favorite fight on the card. Big, thick Willie, William Knight, 9-2, taking on Fabio Cherant, who is 7-2. And currently the betting odds from betonline.ag have -175 for William Knight, +150 Fabio Cherant, and the over-under set at 1.5 rounds, +127 on the under 1.5, -157 the over has been juiced to. Z, we will kick it to you first, my man. Do you have a thought, a prayer, a feeling on this fight? What are we doing here?
I was on the DK preview show on Pub Sports Radio with shout out to DFS by the Numbers Brady, shout out to Luke Sparring with Reality, and Uncle Wheezy. Fun show we do. And I was pretty confident in William Knight just based on the fact that Cherant's not really this level, but I reviewed the tape a little bit more, and it's like, how can you be confident in William Knight? He has no real process to his game. He's just very strong. Doesn't even like he's strong, but he doesn't really hit that hard. Like he's not really deading guys in there or anything. So he's lethal if he gets on top of you, though. As far as a betting perspective goes, I would say take a look at that over 1.5 because I could definitely see them tying up, trickling over 1.5 here. It's not too crazy. I see it out there around -140 in spots. That to me, from a betting perspective, is the only thing that's tempting me. Cherant, he's not great, but I don't think he's at this level. Neither is William Knight, though. So betting perspective, I can't get behind taking a side. So yeah, maybe I'll use William Knight in some DK because again, if he does get on top, he can be lethal. But man, how can you be confident in this fight? You know what I mean?
I definitely hear you, man. And I honestly think that William Knight is a deserving favorite here. But I also think it's such a slot fest type of fight that I don't want an investment in it. But I do think that he's the more physical presence. I do think that he's probably likely to grapple him against the cage at will if he wants to, or to try and get takedowns. And if he secures takedowns, he's an intimidating force merely because of his size. I was pretty confident that Daun Jung was going to beat him last time out and placed a bet. Daun Jung had to really work for that. Despite the fact that he was better everywhere, it was still an effort to take out somebody who's that big and thick and durable. And so I just think that Fabio Cherant is way less polished. I was so unimpressed. I went back and watched his regional tape when he was going to fight Alonzo Menafield, and I was so unimpressed by what I had seen. And I'm not impressed by Menafield either, which I don't think I ended up playing anything on that fight, but I wanted something to like, and man, I just didn't see it. Gordo, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, like you said, man, I don't think either of these guys
in the building. Shout out to Josiah. Sorry about that, Gordo. Keep going.
You're all good, my friend. I have to agree, man. They're both just fighters who aren't that top quality, but you can't get past the fact that William Knight is an absolute beast. But it's crazy because he's such a big frame, such an athletic guy. What does he throw? Overhand right, leg kicks, grinding up against the fence. That's all he does, and that's the problem. Is he has such an athletic gift, but he doesn't do anything with it. So, and he's definitely not a guy I really want to bet in the future. But he's facing a guy in Fabio Cherant who's he's just nothing special either. He's fought some cans, and he just makes a lot of questionable decisions as well. I mean, he jumps guillotine all the time, and I think that if he does it here and Knight gets out and he's on top, the best part about Knight's game is that ground and pound. He's a huge guy. Let him get on top. It's going to be a problem. We've seen him also get clutched up against the fence. It's not a good look because Knight's content to stay there on the entire time, and that's the thing. So it's not a spot where I like either guy because you don't know what happens because you got two guys who just there's a lot to see from them. They all got their special liabilities. Let's just say that. So I could probably see that over 1.5 easily because William Knight will be more than happy to clinch him up against the fence. So that's definitely a good look. But in terms of money line, I know that William Knight opened up minus 250. He was a big favorite, and lots of money is coming to Fabio Cherant for a good reason because I don't think William Knight should ever be that big of a favorite. At the same time, I don't know where Cherant wins this fight. I mean, he doesn't throw that much volume. He's mostly a counter striker, and I don't think he's going to knock out William Knight. I don't think he's going to sub him either. So I really just think this is William Knight's fight to lose, but it's not the one I really want to have an investment in, like you said.
Man, and all that stood out to me when I rewatched Fabio Cherant's fights is this. He's had 2 UFC-esque level fights against Alexa Kamer, who's arguably not even UFC level. And then also, he had the more recent fight against Menafield, who's like, again, Menafield's getting better, but he's like a middling, like prospect talent, kind of older end of the prospects. And he did nothing in either fight. Like he accomplished no successful things in either fight. So I'm just like, man, I don't really know how I would get behind that unless it's a plus 200 type number, unless it's something ridiculous where you're just fading the other side. But yeah, I don't want money involved in this fight, boys. So we can move right along to another fight that I don't want my money involved in whatsoever. But if you guys do, God bless you for it. My blood pressure would just go too high if I had money on Baia Malecki versus Josiah Nunes at 135 pound, a women's bantamweight fight where we have a combined, what is that, boys? 10 professional fights between the two of them. So certainly a UFC level fight. If I've ever seen one. Gordo, we'll kick it to you first, man. Any thoughts on this?
Well, just get it out of the way. Baia Malecki is huge for the division and will have a 7-inch reach and height advantage. There we go. We said it. You got a fighter who will fight long. Well, not long enough for he should, but she's a really long fighter versus someone who will blitz into the pocket and throw really heavy hands in there, Josiah Nunes. But you have two fighters who just not very experienced and who would struggle against a lot of the UFC competition. I think that this is just another fight where like these first 4 fights can go either way, and that's the problem with the fights like this, especially if you're a big DraftKings player like myself. Like you have no core plays that you really want to target in these first 4 fights, which is really a struggle for me. But you look at Malecki, and it's her size. I mean, she's so big that her shots look like they come in slow motion. It's a problem because she has decent power, but it's very predictable. And you look at her recent fights as well, and she's got what a submission win and a decision win, and just two things that are okay. She looks okay on the ground. She got good Muay Thai style, but it's another fight where it's one of these fights where you shouldn't have thrown it to me first because I want no part of this one at all. I think that Nunes is her path to victory here is blitzing in because Malecki was blitzed in her last fight and there was success against her. But I think that Malecki pushes her away. I think that Malecki has the slight advantage on the ground, even though I don't really see it going there. I think that if Malecki wants to win this fight, she keeps it technical. She uses her Muay Thai clinch and she just grinds out a decision.
I completely hear you, man. But sometimes a dollar saved is a dollar earned, my friend. And oftentimes, the hardest thing to do on one of these fight cards is pass. We all want action. We're all here each and every week, right? And so when we look at these fights, we sometimes are just saying, oh, how can I talk myself into one here? And that is what we always have to fight back against. So never feel bad about coming on here and saying, this is a pass for me. This is something I don't want to play, because oftentimes that's what people need reassurance to do as well, which is not approach something with confidence that is false. And so we'll approach it with true humility. Z, how do you feel about this fight, brother?
Yeah, same. I will lean with Baia Malecki. She is huge, like Gordo said. I mean, that you can't ignore that. And like in that last fight versus Macedo, it's just like you see how that size really plays in, because Macedo she didn't look like she was outscaled. It's just she couldn't reach her. You know what I mean? Like literally, like couldn't reach her, couldn't take her down, couldn't do anything with her. Who's she fighting here? What's the name of the lady here? Nunes. She swings, but she's so compact. You know what I mean? So could she get inside and do some damage? I mean, maybe, but she is 5'2". It's just a crazy, crazy difference here. So yeah, I'll go with Baia Malecki, but man, do I want to pay? I mean, she's only a pretty small favorite. I guess that's the side, honestly, but it's just not the type of fight I want to get involved in whatsoever. So no, big fat pass for me. I'll pick Baia Malecki to win, maybe a late TKO.
I hear you there for sure. And, I think if there's one thing that I could say to credit Nunes, who's obviously much smaller, and that's why I feel like the community is like consensus against her this week. But I feel like she's probably the crisper puncher, just pure technical puncher of the two. Probably going to get to the target faster. But like you said, Z, it's like, if I could get to the target faster, but I'm standing 6 feet away from you, it's not going to make much of a difference. So if she's able to close the range, I do think Baia Malecki is very hittable. I do think that she doesn't have a lot of pro experience. I do think that if she gets, pressured significantly, she could crumble. But she should win this fight. It seems like a little bit of a gimme and big size disparity here. So they always say there's no such thing as a fair fight, right? And probably a lot of natural anthropomorphic advantages on the side of Baia Malecki. So while we are all passing here, we will all agree Baia Malecki is probably the deserving favorite and the side. Moving right along, we got a prelim fight here with, honestly, one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, man, Brian Boom Kelleher. This guy is fun as hell. How do you not love Brian Kelleher? He gets in a scrap every time, always looking for an exciting finish. Will throw hands, throw down with somebody, can get into interesting scrambles on the ground. Brian Kelleher is just a lot of fun, man. And he's got Domingo Pilarte here. Speaking of anthropomorphic advantages, I butchered that word the second time, but I got it the first time, so that's all that counts. But I'll tell you this, man. This is an interesting fight to me. This is a fun enough bantamweight fight. I'm surprised Brian Kelleher is going back down. I really think that he loved that COVID catch weight season, 140 and up. But Brian Kelleher is coming back down here. Z, we'll kick it to you first, man. How you feel about this fight?
Yeah, I actually have a bet on this one. So the first few fights I copped out, just passing. But here I'll take Boom Kelleher. He is giving up some substantial attributes. Obviously, Domingo is a lot larger than him, also younger. But I think the experience gap is huge, and I think the skill level gap is quite large as well. Like I think Kelleher is a better scrambler. I think he's a more lethal submission threat. I think he's got a lot better cardio, and I think he has just more refined striking and also more lethal striking. Like Domingo can get off on some shots if he's getting guys at the end of the punches, but I think once Kelleher kind of reads him after a couple minutes. What's up? What's so funny?
We've got Mbaye in the chat saying Domingo is the biggest weight bully ever.
Yeah, that's
His
true. That's
chin
true.
will become James Vick.
That's true. Yeah,
that's what made me burst out laughing. Mbaye, thank you very much for that contribution. Back to you, Z.
I've said in the past that he really doesn't fit the weight class, and he's getting, he's younger than Kelleher, but he is getting on in age as far as he's over 30 now, I believe. So I wouldn't put it past him to move up a division. But yeah, I think how this fight plays out, once Kelleher kind of gets the reads early, I don't want to say he's going to have to weather a storm, but he might just stay calm, stay patient in the early goings. And once he does get that timing down and that distance, I think he's going to exploit Domingo Pilarte on the feet with check hooks, with counter hooks, with just counter punches in general. Domingo Pilarte is very, very susceptible when throwing in the exchanges. Got hurt on his Contender Series fight versus Vince Morales. He was also hurt in that split decision win versus Adrian Yanez. Go back and watch that fight. The ref did make the decision to stop the fight, but then Domingo shot a takedown at the last moment and the ref changed his mind. So, in his recent fights, I mean, let me just bring up his record right quick here. It's just not too impressive, his last 3 or 4 fights, right? So he gets knocked out by Journey Newson. Cash nice little dog ticket there. Very close fight versus Felipe Colares, right? He did beat Vince Morales, but again, he was almost finished in the first round at the end of that first round, and he was technically finished versus Adrian Yanez. So in reality, I mean, he hasn't really won a fight since he beat Chris Pham 5-5 in 2016. I just don't think he's at this level, and I think Kelleher, he'll lose to guys, to big bulls who can outmuscle him, and but if you're not at this level, Kelleher's got all the veteran tricks. So yeah, give me Brian Kelleher, and I've also been targeting the Kelleher inside the distance. Oh, and there's some crazy action going on PFL here. I was targeting Kelleher inside the distance, but I'm sure BetOnline watched my prediction video for it and has yet to open those props. They're hiding them from me, and I don't know if I'll end up pulling the trigger because the line in other spots isn't great. But I definitely think Kelleher is going to get a finish here, and I would use him in DraftKings if I were you.
When I hit props, I TKO them. But when Z hit props, they don't fucking move. Everybody better remember that. Gordo, how do you feel, brother?
Yeah, you said that right. But yeah, I think this is one of those spots on the card that I got to say, I think Kelleher might be my only parlay piece of terms of money line of the week. There's no parlayable fighters on this card, in my opinion, really. I think if you had to pick one, it would be Brian Kelleher. He's got what's going on? Yeah, he's got a clear path to victory here. He's so explosive, and I think he's a great wrestler, and that's really what you could take Pilarte down with. And we can't ignore the fact that Newsom dropped him like a sack of potatoes, bro. He was asleep, and it was a bad knockout, right? So coming back, and Kelleher's exactly that same type of guy. He's so explosive, and that's the one thing you got to look at here is he's an explosive fighter that could put his lights out the same way that he was done. And weight bully aside, fold like James Vick, anything like that, I want my money on. But you look at everything else too. He's a good wrestler. He's got an amazing guillotine if Pilarte ever wants to try to do something against him as well. And Pilarte really shells up against the cage, which is something that Kelleher could exploit because he's got amazing hands. And I think that Kelleher's the spot type of guy to just explode into it and drop him just like Journey Newsom did. So I agree with the fact that I don't think Pilarte is that good. I think that he will do well against lower level guys and he'll do really good. But when it comes to UFC veteran experience, this is the type of fight that Brian Kelleher is just going to run away with. And I think that out of every money line piece on the card, this is my parlayable piece.
And I think when you just compare, we've got on the one side, Domingo Pilarte is losing to the likes of Journey Newsom getting knocked out in the first minute of the fight. And then we have Brian Kelleher losing decision to Ricky Simone, decision to Cody Stamann, and then the last time he lost by finish was December of 2018, darts choke against Montel Jackson. So basically, and before that, it was an armbar against Chito Vera. Unless you're out grappling Brian Kelleher and you have a wrestling advantage, he's a tough guy to beat. And guys keep finding that out. Hunter Azure found that out the hard way too. He was having some striking success. He was getting confident, and then he got caught, he got countered, and he got put out hard. And Brian Kelleher, man, I think that he could drop the boom here, but he could also snag a neck. not to say that he's got the most consistent, reliable submission path, because he doesn't take the back and do a lot of traditional subs. He's kind of like that 10th planet, grab something in transition and try and rip it off type of guy. Arm bars, guillotines, nothing wrong with that. So I think Brian is the side here. I don't have any action on this fight myself. But man, I think that this is going to be a lot of fun. I just didn't want to pay the price on Boom. I think Boom is such a good guy to target as an underdog. He's come through a lot of times in the UFC as an underdog. The market consistently undervalues him, but I think that the market is kind of well aware that he should take care of Domingo Pilarte. But I think they're also giving credit and credence to some of those anthropomorphic advantages. Brian Kelleher is an older bantamweight fighter, and this is, him dropping back down to bantamweight. He's been having those catchweight fights like I talked about. So could we see a cardio discrepancy from Brian Kelleher? Could we see a durability discrepancy? Hopefully not, right? And we have no reason to expect it, but it's just something to keep in the back of your head. Somebody who has made a big stink about not wanting to come back down in weight, and even this week has made a stink about the fact that coming back down in weight sucks. So just something to keep in mind as we approach fight time here. And we've got Payne saying, I told my peers to get Kelleher minus 170, feel very confident about him. He's agreeing with you guys. We've got Grateful Dude saying, boom, absolutely, I'm with you, Grateful Dude. Thanks for stopping by. And we got Mbe saying, maybe Domingo can get a fluke submission. That's the only thing he can do, in my opinion. Just maybe. But I think that this is a violent spot if I've ever seen one. If I'm targeting this fight, I might target it from a violence perspective. But like Z mentioned, full props not available on this fight on Bet Online yet. And the under 2.5 already steamed to minus 180. So I will be passing on that. But we can move right along.
Oh, let me just add real quick, my friend.
Yes, please do.
The weight thing's a big thing too, but like I said, only parlay piece of the week, and the person I parlayed him with in the PFL, Livy, just snatched up a nice submission that really made me sweat.
Did you see the whole fight?
Oh yeah. Oh, I heard about it. I saw the little Twitter updates, but I heard she just strike for the first round, which is not what you want to see.
She was almost knocked out, man. She got knocked down. Yeah.
Well, she pulled through. Good thing I didn't watch. I'd be sweating. That. But I guess I now got plus money going straight on Kelleher going into this weekend. I got a few units on that, which I will take any day of the week. So somehow I got a parlay on this card. So there we go.
Well done.
For gravy, man. You're off to the races, dude. That's a good hit. And congratulations to you. Boys, next up, we got Luis Saldana. We've got Austin Lingo, featherweight bout, mid-level to low level. I would describe this as, I don't have the strongest take on this fight, if I'm honest. One of the fights I spent the least amount of time taping. I backed Austin Lingo last time out against Jacob Kilburn, but it was just a straight fade on Jacob Kilburn. I didn't think he had anything to offer in the UFC. And so I was able to cash that ticket, but it was a little sketchier than I wanted it to be. And Austin Lingo, I think he also got tuned up by Yusuf Zalal and made me think Yusuf Zalal was a good fighter. So I don't know what to make of this Austin Lingo character, but I don't think he's all that good. Luis Saldana got some anthropomorphic advantages, height, range. I think he's probably younger. So interesting enough fight. How do we feel, boys? I'll kick it to you first, Z.
All right, so this is a second bet I have, or second fight I have bets on this card. I actually took Saldana. I botched the line movement because I got in at minus 150, so people can get much better odds on him now. And I like this side, man. Saldana is an experienced striker. Austin Lingo is going to want to engage in the pocket. He's a good soldier, he keeps his hands up, he pushes forward. But I think the way Saldana plays the edge of the pocket down the pipe is really going to give Austin Lingo's style fits. And I also took a small bet on Saldana by knockout at plus 300. I think there's a lot of recency bias in this fight because Saldana just squeaked past who's the guy? Griffin, right? Was it? Jordan Griffin, that's right.
Yep, and everybody thought it was a robbery, so the market always overreacts.
Yeah, it was. It was a very competitive fight.
It was a robbery.
What's that?
I said yes, it was a robbery.
Okay. It was one of the cases where Saldana wins the first half of the first round and then squeaked the third. So I do understand what the judges saw, but I also understand why people are low on him after that fight. And conversely, Austin Lingo did get his first win in the UFC, but I mean, Kilburn's just not on this level, so I don't really put much stock into that. And stylistically, like I said, I favor Saldana for the edge of the pocket striking. To my eye, he's a much more seasoned striker, more aware of range, and looks for counter shots really well. He's also the slightly larger fighter here and more experienced in MMA. So, yeah, give me Luis Saldana. Line's moving against me. I might have to add to that position, but I've got 150 on Saldana at minus 150 and 40 on him by knockout at plus 300. So, yeah, let's go.
Nice. And we've got Payne. He's going with the dog lingo here, so we got a little bit of friendly disagreement, all in good love and spirits. Gordo, how do you feel about this, brother?
Yeah, man, I was just typing in the chat like I'm not on the show myself, man. I'm so used to just watching you myself. I just typed in there. Anyways, like I said in there, I think that if you bet Lingo in the spot, you take him by KO because he is the explosive fighter here. He's going to want to get in that pocket. And like you said, he's a soldier. He'll fight for your money. The problem I have with this is Saldana has fought a lot of grapplers in the past, and that's what's been his downfall because he struggles against constant pressure and stuff like that. But when you have a guy like Saldana, he's going to win the minutes. He's going to put things down the pipe. He's going to do what he has to do to take care of Lingo. And I think if you have a guy like that who's going to win the minutes and likely win the decision, if you are backing the dog, I would more than likely take him by KO because I see that as his most likely path to victory here. Again here, though, Lingo got thrown to the dogs his first fight out, took off Yusuf Zalal. Not an easy debut, but he's a very good boxer in my opinion. He's got very heavy hands, a fast lead hook, light on his feet, and I mean he's okay in the clinch as well too. But the problem I have here is Saldana will put up way more volume and has a very, very quick jab. So those are the main points I took from this. And two guys are on their feet. I think we see a nice standing affair here. I've seen the community really split on this fight at all. It's one I'm going to stay away from. I could see both sides. I really do like your breakdown of Saldana. I think he does have a great style to win this fight here. I wouldn't count out Lingo because he is I think he's a pretty good fighter as well. He's got some good hands. So he catches Saldana, you never know. He's got some very heavy hands.
True. One thing I just wanted to add is a lot of people are putting stock into the pressure of Lingo in this fight, and I do think he's going to pressure. But the thing is, we saw Zalal really just kind of toy with him on the back foot, and I think Saldana can strike off the back foot as well. So that pressure might just be, playing into Saldana's style and giving him more counter opportunities. So, yeah, there's that.
Well, this is a fight that I'm going to revisit from a tape perspective. I didn't go deep on this fight, but hearing that Z is pretty confident in the Saldana position, and I think Gordon, agrees with a lot of the same points. So, if you boys are saying that there's something to look at, then I'm going to dig in and investigate. But I haven't done it yet, so that's why I remain actionless on that fight. But we are on to the main card, and boys, if I could tell you, this might just be the single best fight of the night, kicking off the main card at 125 pounds. Alexandre Pantoja is taking on Brandon Raw Dog Royval. What a damn fight. Flyweight's a fun division, and this is another great example. Two guys that go absolutely balls to the wall and like to put on fun fights for the fans. We will kick it to you first for this one. Z, how are you feeling about this matchup, man?
I just placed a bet today, actually. I was eyeing it up for quite a while. I waited for this prop to open on a few other books, so I got plus 240 on Pantoja wins inside the distance. I put 130 on that. Look, Royval, he's got some tricks, He's an opportunistic fighter, a bit of a chaotic fighter, but I don't think Pantoja's having any of that nonsense. I don't think he's way too serious for a guy like Royval. Royval presents way too many openings on the feet, and he is not the better grappler. Pantoja is certainly the better grappler between the two. You see the back take that he had in the Askarov fight. You just see in all of his fights, he's never really dominated on the mat. He always does the right thing. He always finds a good position. Very experienced black belt. And striking-wise, he's one of these guys who, at times it doesn't look the prettiest, but he has a veteran ability to put fist to face, and that's all you need. The overhand right counter that he ended Matt Schnell with, very sneaky stuff. His trigger is ridiculous, guys. This dude, his reaction time is serious. This is a fighter who's been fighting since he's 17 years old. I think he's only 30 or 31 right now, maybe even 29, actually. Is he 29? Let me check his age for you boys. But yeah, Pantoja is a serious veteran. Yeah, so he is 31 now, been fighting since he was 17. So he's right in his prime, very experienced fighter. And one thing about Pantoja is You see in the Wilson Hayes fight, right? Hayes was trying to feint him. He was trying to get him to bite on something so he could counter it, right? He's trying to draw stuff out. But he throws this non-committal jab, and Pantoja's on it like crazy. He just follows the jab back and knocks him out. And that's that trigger, and that is veteran abilities. You know what I mean? You can't just teach somebody that. You have to have experience to be able to do that. And I just love how calm and composed Pantoja is. If he's not finding success with the hands, he'll start letting the kicks go. He digs to the body with a nasty kick. And his game is just all bread and butter, not giving you openings, staying calm, staying composed, finding his openings, forcing you to make mistakes. And Royval is the type of dude who, despite, like I said, being dangerous, being opportunistic, he makes a ton of mistakes. He leaves a ton of openings. Again, with all due respect, because I bet on him when he was fighting Tim Elliott. You know, I figured a grappler is going up against Royval. Royval's dangerous submission threat. Cash that ticket, pat myself on the back. But here, he's not submitting Pantoja. I would be shocked if he submits Alexandre Pantoja. And to be honest, I thought Pantoja won that Askar Askarov fight. I mean, so if you look at it, his only real hard loss was Davison Figueiredo until you go back to the beginning of 2018 where he lost to Dustin Ortiz, who's a wrestler. Royval is not a wrestler. He'll give bottom position. So, yeah, I say Pantoja by any way he wants. I mean, the fight versus Manel Kape was a little bit slow-paced, but they were both trying to bait each other out a lot in that fight. And Kape is a very durable and explosive fighter, and he doesn't present openings like Royval does. You know what I mean? So I love Pantoja here. I think there's still some value on the money line if you want to take that and you want to just give yourself, a bit more of a chance to cash, but maybe less line value. But for me, I think Pantoja's, I think his inside the distance should be more like plus 122, not plus 240. I think it's more around 45% outright, maybe 40%, but even still, I got value at plus 240. So Pantoja by any way he wants, knockout or submission, easy money.
Awesome. And I like the conviction in the play, man. I think Payne is rightly pointing out under 2.5 is a good prop here. I think there's finishing potential on both sides. I think Pantoja is probably the more likely finisher. And I think that's being reflected by the betting markets. Z, that was a great snipe, man. I know that on Bet Online, it's already down to plus 200, the inside the distance line for Pantoja. So you were able to get a pretty good number there at plus 240. But I would also let the people know that we are at minus 178 on the money line for Alexandre Pantoja. We're at plus 153 for Brandon Royval. That is from betonline.ag. We got Paul in the chat saying thank you for all the insight. Happy to be here, Paul. Happy that you're here joining us, man. Thank you very much for tuning in. And so I think that this is a fight where we've got a lot of finishing potential on both sides, man. The under 2.5 is what I was looking to target. I feel pretty confident in Pantoja here, but my concern was just the cardio, man. I think that Royval has pretty phenomenal cardio as well as pace. And I think that in a 3-round atmosphere, he can force people into a style of fight that's kind of unsustainable. That Kai Kara France fight is actually where I was able to cash my ticket on Royval at plus 190. And it was because, I felt like he would be competitive enough in striking exchanges and create a chaotic pace. And I'd seen Kai Kara France kind of have lapses in his grappling judgment before. And that's where I thought that we had a good opportunity to cash. Here I don't see that. I don't see the defensive liabilities for Pantoja. I just see that if he gets tired, if he starts to drown in the pace, that would be my only concern. And the reason I like that under 2.5 as a potential hedge or an added play, if I'm going to target Pantoja, I might also target that under 2.5. But as of now, haven't made an official bet on that. I think the under 2.5 sitting at plus 105. So there's still a plus money number out there, but I want to line shop a little bit. I think there's better numbers available market wide. And I just think that either guy can finish, but man, it's so much harder for Royval to find that submission opportunity in this matchup than it would normally be for him. But I do think, man, Pantoja has been so durable, but he gets hit a lot. And I am always worried that durability is going to crack, especially as somebody gets a little bit older in a smaller division. 31, not too old. I think he still should be fine for another 2-3 fights. But my concern would just be down the road, Pantoja. His durability may start to fade a little bit. Gordo, I'm going to kick mention that Monk is in the chat. What's up, boys? Great panel. Appreciate you, Monk. Gordo, how do you feel, buddy?
The word of this fight is chaos. Brandon Royval loves his chaos, and I love it for. It's going to be such an entertaining fight every time they get out there. Absolute scraps, and I absolutely love him for it. Brandon Royval is one of my favorite fighters to watch. Other side of though, Pantoja is nearly flawless on paper. He's got such a well-rounded game, and that's what I think he has a huge edge here, is because in a lot of fights, there's not many fighters who can match him in every aspect, right? He's got very slick striking. I think that he's overlooked a lot on that, and his BJJ is insane too, right? He's great at what he does all around. The problem I have here where I'm not betting him is Royval will drag people into firefights without him knowing. He loves that chaos. And whereas Pantoja has great discipline, if you see someone wobbled the way that Kai Kara France saw Brandon Royval wobbled, you're going to charge in. And that's what I think is Pantoja's going to have to play a picture-perfect game to make sure he doesn't rush into that firefight that Royval wants him to get into. I think that Brandon Royval is live to do well just because of his pace, his output. Everything he does is just so chaotic that it's hard for a lot of fighters to adapt to it. But you can't look past Pantoja because on paper, this man is so well-rounded. And I think that almost every aspect, except for, I'm going to say, pace and maybe cardio, this is all Pantoja's fight to lose. So I have no action on it because I'm just going to sit back and watch and enjoy because I love watching Royval fight. But I think that Pantoja is going to just do it whatever way he wants, as he said. I think it's a very sharp pick because in the inside the distance line, that is, just because, like he said, he can take it wherever he wants to do it. And if you have someone in Royval who will get hit, who will take in a lot of damage as well, just to draw people into that firefight, and because he's hard as well, Pantoja will be able to finish. So I think that is going to be a great fight. I'm really looking forward to it. It's my fight of the night, and I do think Pantoja takes it. But any DraftKings player out there, Royval is the definition of a GPP play.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me, folks? All right, cool. I think that we left off with Gordo giving his pick for that Pantoja fight. Did anybody have anything to add on that fight before we move it along? Cool. All right, so moving right along the card, guys, we've got another fun fight up next. On the main card, we've got Vince from Hell, Pichel, taking on Austin Thud Hubbard. And this is a fun fight, man. Lightweight is kind of getting featured here. I feel like this is the card for older lightweight talents to get sorted out. You know, where do people stand in the older end of this lightweight division? And, Vince from Hell, Pichel, kind of sneaky good resume in the UFC, taking 2 finish losses, but against pretty credible opponents, and otherwise has strung together a pretty credible list of wins. And on the other side here, we've got Austin Hubbard, who basically has just been through grappling gauntlet after grappling gauntlet so far in his run in the UFC. And he's come up aces against the likes of Max Roscoff, who was very young and inexperienced, but he's also been ground out by the likes of Marco Madsen. He had some success in that fight, but was largely taken down and had very few answers. So, man, interesting fight here, boys. And the line movement has kind of surprised me in this fight, but I will kick it to you first, Gordon, to mix things up. How do you feel about this?
First question, why is Austin Hubbard always fighting wrestlers? Always no matter what. I think this is just, I don't know if he's trying to practice for it or maybe it's going to pay off, but I think this is another one where Vince Pichel does his job and takes him down, keeps going. I think that he is the side here. Vince Pichel is definitely the side, in my opinion. He's very veteran savvy, and that's what I love about him, because Austin Hubbard makes the mistakes that I see. I mean, he does fought a lot of wrestlers and grapplers who do have a lot of tape. What's going on? He has a good get-up game, but at the same time, his takedown offense is so weak, and Vince Pichel is someone who will take advantage of it. I think Vince Pichel is a great option for a lot of plays, especially on DraftKings this week, because saw DFS by numbers, so you got to point out the DraftKings. But he's going to get those takedowns. He's going to get those control times. He's going to do well. And I think this is his fight here. He's just such a smart fighter in so many different ways, and he's willing to grind you out the way that Austin Hubbard has been grinded out. We'll talk about the Marco Madsen fight later. But I think that the way that he controls his top position and the way that he does his job in the clinch, on the ground, he will be able to do very well in this fight. And I think it's his fight to lose. I mean, he does his job really well, and he will grind you out. And Austin Hubbard is no Gregor Gillespie, so I'm going to take him to win this fight here. And honestly, the line's movement surprised me as well. I know I see in the comments there just plus money, and that's honestly, that'd be a good shout here too, because I think this is his fight to lose. What about you guys?
Man, if there was one thing that concerns me here, it's just the age of Vince Pichel, because he is really starting to get up there for a lightweight, but he's been old in the lightweight division and performing quite admirably despite that fact, even against younger competition. And so, man, I feel like Vince Pichel was kind of the right favorite here. And I get why people are betting against him. People like to bet that youth advantage. I think it's one of the market's, favorite avenues to exploit. But man, I think that this is, a spot where we've got somebody who's been out wrestled, out grappled, and we've got somebody who's averaging 4 takedowns per UFC bout. Am I missing something? I think the only, question mark here is what happens if Austin Hubbard gets on top of Vince Pichel and takes him down, because Vince Pichel doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. But yeah, I'm considering playing Vince Pichel. I've seen him hanging out at that pick'em price all week, and I've been waiting for plus money. Shout out to Brady from DFS by the numbers. Shout out to him and Uncle Weezy. Shout out the work they do with Z as well. But we've got Monk in the chat saying we got minus 110 on Bet Online. And, I'm really hoping it moves to plus money, Monk. But the problem is, if we all go move on that line now, the bookies are going to start adjusting it. So, man, I think it's an interesting fight, and hard to know where that final line is going to end up given the movement we've seen so far. Z, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm scared of Vince Pichel. You know what I mean? He's a veteran fighter. He's a bad dude. He's one of these guys who really enjoys hurting people, I'm sure. And he's got a high-level skill set. He's a serious black belt. He's a very experienced fighter despite not having many pro fights. He's been around the gyms for a long, long time. So I give him a ton of respect, but the age gap is a serious thing. And I'm also a bit worried that he's only had one fight since having his hip replacement. And that was versus Jim Miller, who is another very old fighter. So fair play. He has competed well versus Roosevelt Roberts in the past, but post that serious surgery, I don't know. I'm not gonna be on the train with you boys. For me, it's just a big pass. Hubbard's one of these guys. He could be making improvements fight to fight. I really liked his composure last time out. And I just think this is very competitive, and pick'em is probably pretty accurate. For me, I'd need plus 150 on either side to be tempted into a bet. But prediction wise, I'll go with Hubbard, but I don't mind Gordo's take in using Vince as a DraftKings option, because again, it's slim pickings down there in DraftKings this week from my perspective.
Man, I would also mention though, Vince hasn't really been able to get off on his submission game yet in the UFC, but he's not terrible. He's attacked chokes and looked pretty confident.
He's a good grappler. No, he's a good grappler.
And hasn't been able to find a finish. We saw Malecki was able to just insta kill Austin Hubbard from the back. I just think that there might be a grappling finish, a ground and pound type finish that materializes for Vince Pichel early. But man, I think that the longer the fight goes on, that would be a little bit my concern, man. I do think that Austin Hubbard's one of those guys that's pretty tough and durable and kind of hard to put away, kind of hard to wrestle too. I know that he gets out wrestled by a lot of people, but he makes it hard. And that's why Marco Madsen looks so gassed. He's kind of making you work for everything. And that's a little concerning for a 38-year-old. So you know what, Z, maybe you've just talked some sense into me. Maybe I should pump the brakes a little bit. But I do think plus money is a good look. But I'm probably not going to touch the fight unless it hits plus money. That would be my current take.
I just checked the sub prop, and you're getting plus 800 up to plus 1100. So if you do want to play Vince Pichel's black belt, that's not a bad look. That's a good odds range to be in.
Yeah, I would even look at that Pichel inside the distance at plus 380, I think, if I was going to play it. Because, man, I do think that it's not likely he's going to get on top of Hubbard and just smash him out of there. But if Hubbard is getting flattened out, Vince Pichel is kind of an animal like that. And I feel like even in that Gregor Gillespie fight, people kind of forget, like from bottom, he was smashing him with elbows. And like, I feel like there was points in that fight when Gregor started to question himself, and he was able to come back and whatever and looked good doing it. But man, I felt like Gregor was like, who the hell is this guy? And why is this so much harder than I thought it was going to be?
His name is suiting, right? From hell. Like it's so fitting for him because he's definitely a nasty dude in there.
Absolutely, brother. I'm excited for that fight, man. I think it's going to be a fun one. And maybe Vince can find the magic one more time. But boys, I could say with excitement, I actually have a bet on the next card, or excuse me, on the next fight on this card. We've got Trevin Jones, finally 5-star making his return. The man just can't get to the damn fight. You know, his opponents keep pulling out, late notice. But we've got Sadio Kub Kakramanov steps up on very short notice, less than a week's notice here. 8-2. You know, this isn't the typical UFC fill-in guy where they just found a warm body from the regional scene. This guy actually has some real talent, has fought some talented fighters, fought Umar Nurmagomedov when he was 5-0, and Nurmagomedov was 7-0. So that was a PFL showcase fight in 2018. He looked fairly decent in that fight. This is where I was thinking of the Pipe Vargas fight, guys. So shouts, if you have been here from the beginning, you heard me make that error before. Now I'm remembering that it was Pipe Vargas fighting Sadio Kub Kakramanov, and Kakramanov was having success early. He was getting to his wrestling. He was taking him down, and you could see that he was winging his punches so hard. He wanted to finish. He's an aggressive guy. He wants to get in there and scrap. But what happens is he spends his energy quickly. Right? He puts a lot behind all of his punches. He does a lot of what I like to call big actions, right? The Daniel Cormier phrase, I think it's so apt. Spinning kicks, jumping this, fly into range, sprint across the octagon. All these things that tax your cardio, and especially just selling out on missed punches. He does far too much selling out on missed punches for my liking. And that's something that's completely taxing. Like if you've ever been throwing at a heavy bag and you missed 2 or 3 times, you're like, man, I should take a couple 30-second break or something. And I think that he's going to have a hard time in this fight dealing with Trevin Jones, who's kind of awkward, kind of tricky, not the greatest volume striker, but he works off the lead hand as his power hand. Not a lot of people are doing that in MMA. And especially he mixes it up, right? He'll throw the lead hook. He'll throw the lead uppercut. He'll throw it as a straight. He'll throw the power hands behind it. He'll throw the kicks to the body. He's got interesting tools. And when he's at that wide range, when he's not throwing a lot, he's throwing heavy calf kicks that tend to make a difference and slow down his rangier, bouncier opponents. I also think he's got an opportunistic submission game. People have ragged on him for his regional scene. There were times when he would get taken down and held down, and that's true and fair. But there was also him working from his back, him looking for opportunities, and him being opportunistic. As soon as there was an opening, he took the back and he finished. And I think that that's the kind of grappler that I look to back from a finishing perspective. So the props have been late to the party on this fight, and for obvious reasons, it's the last fight announced on the card. We did not get lines on this fight until last night. I could tell you that right now on BetOnline.ag, we are sitting at -141 for Trevin Jones and +121 for Sadio Kub Kakramanov. I am on Trevin Jones, 1.5 units at +107. Big blessings, boys. As of now, I got the line movement. I took that bet. Shout out to Luke from Sparring with Reality Betting. He pointed out that BetOnline had dropped the line. Guys, he opened -300. I'm talking about Trevin Jones in this case. And quickly, the market bought up the underdog price on Kakramanov. I think that was wise. I don't hate anybody who's taken that +250, +200, +185. But now we're getting to the point where Kakramanov had been bet to the favorite, -120 or -113 or something. And I thought that was a little excessive. He's taken this fight on 3 days' notice. He's been finished on the regional scene before. He's lost decisions on the regional scene before. I don't know. I feel like Trevin Jones continually overlooked by the market. This is a guy who's cashed as a inside the distance ticket at +500 and +800 so far in the UFC. He beat Timur Valiev, who's like a top 10 type talent, a top 15 type talent. It's like, man, I feel like Trevin Jones just can't get the respect he deserves. I feel like even minus 140 is a little short here, but I also think Kakramanov deserves that respect, man. So I'll kick it to you, Gordo. Do you have opinions on this fight? Did you get to tape it?
Yeah, I got to tape it, and like you said, I think you broke it down pretty well. I mean, the shortcomer. I'm not going to pronounce his name as well as you did, so I'm not even going to try. But he's a good fighter. I mean, he's not just one of these guys that picked off the side. And your line you got is amazing. I think that Jones is an amazing dog, but I don't know how much I like him as a favorite. And that's the thing I have here. I mean, I was on Ronnie Lawrence against him because I think that Ronnie Lawrence was able to grind him out, get those takedowns, and really test out that ground game we haven't got to see too much of recently in the UFC from Jones. And this is another spot where we do have a chain wrestler, not to the same extent as Ronnie Lawrence, in Sadio Kub Kakramanov. It's just one of these things where so many different things had happened. And the thing with Trevin Jones is he's overlooked in every single aspect. I mean, he's got insane power. He's a black belt. He's got so many tools that he could use. And every single time he comes out here, at one point or another, he is a dog. I can't figure this guy out. I mean, Trevin Jones, a lot of good things on paper, which is why I would love that line you had. If I had the same line you did, I'd be all over it. But I don't know how much I can back him at a big favorite when you have a guy inside your coup who's got good power, good wrestling, and who's looked to hold his own in a lot of his fights. The problem I have with Sadio Kub is he does slow in the third round, and we've seen Trevin Jones be able to exploit that when Baia did tire out in his first fight. And that's the thing, you said it perfectly. He puts out so much energy. Kub puts out so much energy into all his actions that he does tire out. Trevin Jones got cardio for days. He's got a great chin and great resiliency as well. So it's one of these things where so many things go either way. I do lean Trevin Jones here. I have no action on it, but like I said, if I had your line, I would. So I'm going to pick him here. I think it does become a really close fight, though. I think this is going to be a great scrap. I think Sadio Kub aims for those takedowns early. And we get to really see where Trevin Jones is on the ground.
The last thing I wanted to add here, man, was just the difference in experience here. You got Trevin Jones, who's got about twice the professional experience, almost 20 professional fights. And on top of that, he's had the UFC level experience, right? So he's arguably had the much higher level of experience. He's had much more experience. And on top of that, he's been doing better and better. Like he went from being a guy who was in a lot of close decisions to being, it's kind of like the Masvidal effect. After you're in enough close decisions, where I think his losses on the regional scene in the last few years were only split decisions. And then he was like, let me get finishes here. He got a submission, gets into the UFC, 2 knockouts in a row when everybody's talking about he has no power. So I think it's interesting, man. I think we've seen already that Pipe Vargas fight. He got put out. Like badly by that knee. So I don't know. I think that we could see a finish either direction here from Trevin Jones. I think it's a fun and competitive fight. I think especially early, Kakramanov going to look very good. So if you guys want to get in on that plus money on Trevin Jones, you might have it again available to you after round 1. Because, it's interesting. I thought the funniest thing about this, both these guys last fought in March. Both these guys secured a second round knockout victory. So the under is not released for this fight yet, but I think this is a violent spot. I think that, if we're looking at Trevin Jones from a red flag perspective, in that Valia fight, he almost got finished, right? It was a fight that was certainly qualified for a stoppage if the referee so chose. So I think that, man, it just showed the heart and the toughness and the durability, frankly, the recoverability of somebody like Trevin Jones. And I think that in this spot, man, he's going to exploit his experience advantage on a UFC newcomer who's going to have success later in his career. I just think that this is too tall a mountain to climb your first time out in the UFC. And that's the way I feel about it. Gordo, I'll kick it to you on the way out.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I did just check lines. I forget what book it is, but there is an under, the total set at 1.5 right now, which I was looking for my 2.5 rounds because I think that the under is live here. Either Sadio Kub looks as good as people say he does on the ground and it does take Jones out early like Valiev couldn't, or you have Trevin Jones come in late and finish him late. So I wouldn't mind the fight doesn't go, but the way it looks right now, the total set at 1.5, the fight doesn't go at minus 185. Not a line I really want to like.
I hear you for sure. And with that, boys, we can move right along this card. We've got a heavyweight scrap And I know that Z's got some action on this. Before I kick it to you, Z, I'm just going to shout out Anaconda Bets, lighting up the chat. Everybody shout out Anaconda. He says Parker Porter must be defeated. And I know that my man Z tends to agree. Z, how do you feel about this, boss?
Yeah, I guess you don't care how I feel about the Trevin Jones versus
Oh my
Kakramanov fight,
goodness.
but that's fine. I won't, whatever.
No, drop
whatever,
the bomb on us.
No,
Z.
it's fine.
I apologize.
No, it's fine. Look, Trevin Jones gets underrated because he's always with these come from behind knockouts. But the thing is, that's his game. He actually just stays calm and looks for the lead right counters. So it's kind of weird. It's like you could often say he only has a puncher's chance, but he plays into that win condition. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic there. And Kakramanov, decent striker, getting better, good experience on the regional scene. But like you said, he has been deaded before, and I wouldn't put it past Trevin Jones to do that to him, especially on short notice. So fair play to your plus money ticket. Now moving on to Chase Sherman versus Parker Porter. I've got 4 bets on this fight. The way I mixed it up is I took $50 on Sherman inside the distance, 50 on the under 1.5. Sorry, inside the distance is plus 105. Under 1.5, I believe is, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think it's plus 140 I got on that. That's right. 140 on the under 1.5. And then I also took flyers on Sherman wins by knockout in round 1 for $50 at plus 400, and Sherman wins by knockout in round 2 at plus 650, both for $50. So 4 bets, $50 a piece, $200. I think Sherman finishes Parker Porter. I think there's a big level gap. When you're looking at this fight on paper, Sherman is larger, he's younger, he has more experience, and he is the more technical fighter. The vast majority of his wins do come by knockout, so I think if he wins, it's by knockout. And if the fight goes late, he does tire out. So I think his best chance to win by knockout is in the first 10 minutes. That's why I bet it accordingly. Parker Porter, he's a big guy. He swings hard, but he's been finished a bunch, and he's been hurt a bunch. He got hurt in that last fight versus Parisian. And conversely, Sherman actually hurt Arlovsky in their first round. So, yeah, give me Chase Sherman to hurt Parker Porter. I just don't really see what Porter's going to do to Sherman outside of, weathering a storm and dragging him into deep waters. That could happen, but I'm gonna side with the obvious favorite here in Chase Sherman. Just hope he gets it done inside the distance.
I hear you for sure. And I think that, we've got Mbe saying Porter by points. She also called him Porker, which I thought was funny. But Porter by points, man, I feel like is the sneaky angle if you are looking for Porter. And the reason being is because, man, we've seen a tendency to slow down over the course of his fights. I think, Z, you targeted this fight very smart, man, because I do think there's a lot of front-loaded potential for Chase Sherman to find a finish here. Chris Dawkins is my absolute boy, but he made that look so easy, just lighting up Porker. Jeez, now you got me saying it, Mbe, you ruined me. But, man, I think that, this is Chase Sherman kind of had a really tough run in the UFC, man, 3-6. That's why I wasn't really looking to get behind him in this spot as the biggest favorite on the card. But, the way that Z is choosing to target this fight, I do think is a sharp angle. I do think that that's where a lot of his success is front-loaded. Gordo, I'll kick it to you, man.
Yeah, man, like you said, the biggest favorite on the card is Chase Sherman in 2021. Who would have guessed? But I think, can I say rightfully so? Yeah, I think he should be the favorite in the spot. I don't know if he should be the biggest favorite on the card, but he definitely should be the favorite in the spot. I think he's got great path to victory here. Porter isn't that good, in my opinion. I mean, I respect everyone that gets in the cage, really, but there's levels to this. Like you said, Chase Sherman is one of those ones where he's going to bring that power, he's going to bring that heat in round 1, and he's got so many different ways he can do that. Like you said, Chris Dawkins lit him up. I see in the comments there, chop down the legs. There's so many different things that Chase Sherman could do in this opportunity just to get to him, because we all know that Porter isn't some next level contender, and whereas Sherman isn't either, there are levels to it, and he is definitely better in a lot of aspects. I like his power here. I am fearing of him slowing down in later rounds, though. I think that if you bet Chase Sherman, you bet him inside the distance. That is my look, because whereas he should win 2 rounds, I'd be scared of him slowing down enough to the point where Porter takes advantage, because I don't really like backing those fights with cardio. I know I talk about it with on a few other shows, but cardio is one of my most important things to me, so you got to be careful with that, right? So I'm going to lean Chase Sherman. I'm going to pick Chase Sherman to win, and if I do bet it. It will be inside the distance. No action yet, but I am looking towards it. And this is one of the ones where this is one of my core plays on DraftKings this week because finish of potential is there.
Now, I think the only other thing I would add is I don't believe there's ever been a takedown recorded by Chase Sherman in the UFC. And so Parker Porter, to the extent that he's able to press a grappling advantage, I don't know that he'll be able to. I think he's going to be a little bit smaller and probably at a strength disadvantage in this spot. But to whatever extent there's a grappling advantage, it's probably on the Porter side for whatever that's worth. But yeah, otherwise, I totally agree with you guys. Not a fight that I was supremely interested in betting, but maybe that will change if I go a little bit deeper on the tape here. I just saw that the heavy price tag, and I was like, man, it's probably the right guy favored, but I didn't want to get involved. But like I said, man, I think Z's got the right way to look at this. So I'm going to see if I want to get involved on the inside the distance. But as of now, I am passing on the heavyweights, although I will point out that heavyweights have been my best weight class so far this year in terms of predictions. How funny is that, boys? But that is a true story. And so I think that I would favor Chase Sherman here, but man, not a fight that I'm taking investment in based on my current understanding of the matchup. Maybe the most debated fight on the card is up next, boys. I've been talking about the fact that we've got 155-pound old heads scrapping it out for who's the future of the old heads in the UFC. And this is another example of that. We've got Clay Guida, an absolute warrior of the octagon. I tweeted it out earlier this week. How do you not love Clay Guida? Just gets in fights, been out here, been doing the damn thing. I want to say since 2003 or some absurd, it's just been doing the damn thing. Clay Guida doesn't stop. He's a soldier. On the other side, we got Marco Madsen. This is an Olympian, a silver medalist in the, I want to say, what was that? Rio Games in 2016 in Greco-Roman. Very impressive guy. That's not easy to do. And if we look at what takedowns are actually successful on a average basis by attempt in the UFC, upper body takedowns are much more successful than lower body takedowns by and large. And so Marco Madsen has a pretty functional wrestling game, but he doesn't have the most complete game to go with it. He doesn't have the striking that's necessarily crisp and clean and supportive of his broader game. He was kind of getting picked apart down the stretch and did get outlanded in terms of significant strikes against Austin Hubbard his last time out. So, man, it's an interesting fight here. Kind of hard to know what to make of it, but a lot of people are on Clay Guida as an underdog, and I can't fault their logic. I think I see a lot of upside to Clay Guida, but I also will say Marco Madsen training at Fight Ready, looking very, very good physically. Take that for what it's worth. Looking very good physically. I'm interested to see how this fight plays out. Z, we'll kick it to you first, man. How do you feel about it?
Sure. I listened to Uncle Weezy break this down, and he's really solid on the Madsen side. I heard of some other people taking Guida as the dog. From my perspective, it's like Madsen does have the credentials. He is a very strong grappler, or wrestler specifically, but in his UFC fights, he has one quick win and then another fight where he gassed out in the third round. So I don't really understand having confidence in him. Sure, he might come in here and just completely dominate Guida in the wrestling, but if he is doing that, I do expect Guida to outlast him. We know Guida has endless cardio, boundless energy. But then again, when I look at the Guida side, I'm like, man, am I really going to bet Clay Guida in 2021 as a short dog? Like, no. So for me, from a betting perspective, I'm pretty content to just pass this fight, but the tempting side, in my opinion, is Guida. He's been developing that right hand, kind of a sneaky veteran weapon at this point. And, you can't discount how much UFC experience, how much MMA and fight experience he has. I believe when Madsen made his debut, Guida had already had 30 or 40 fights. I think it was 40 fights. So that's huge experience gap. But then again, like I said, I'm not chomping at the bit to bet Clay Guida as like a plus 140. If it got bigger and he was like past that, maybe like plus 186 range, if it's getting up there closer to 2-1, I might take a small bet on Guida just based on the cardio. But as it stands now, it's a pass. I'm happy to sit back and watch this fight. And I will be using Guida as a DraftKings dog because, again, they're few and far between this week.
Understood. Just wanted to point out, we got Payne saying, remember people, when Madsen gasses in round 3, Hubbard doesn't push the pace like Guida. I think this is a Minner Elkins situation. Fair play to you, Payne. I kind of like where your head's at there. I don't know for sure, man, because is it possible that Marco Madsen comes out here, takes him down, and submits him and makes this conversation look null and void? It's very possible. Clay Guida's been submitted a lot of times in his career, but it's typically been by very credible, high-level pros with a similar amount of experience. And this is kind of a step down in competition for Clay Guida, all things considered. Marco Madsen, obviously a physically strong and intimidating dude, but again, we talked about a negative strike differential thus far in 2 UFC bouts against much less credible competition. Then on the Clay Guida side, man, Clay has actually good stats. Like if you go back and look at Clay Guida's striking defense historically, it's like 63% over 20 UFC bouts or something. It's like Clay Guida doesn't really get hit and hurt that often. Who has really controlled Clay Guida to wrestling-based wins and decisions is not all that common. You're muted, Z. But no, go ahead, please.
No, it's all good. It's all good, Liam.
No worries. But yeah, man, I just think that Clay Guida, he controls a lot of his fights in the clinch, as well as from a wrestling perspective. So is he going to get out wrestled here early? Probably. Does that mean he's not going to win the fight? I don't know about that. I think that he could out wrestle Madsen late. I think he could find a finish of his own. And I think that if this fight remains standing for long portions of time, this is one of the few times in Clay Guida's career he actually may be at a striking advantage. I think that if Madsen was a young man, I would understand the passion behind him more. But Madsen's like the same age category. He's like 36 years old. So probably on a better pharmaceutical regimen, but otherwise pretty similar guys here, similar skill sets, except one guy's got way more credible experience and he's the underdog. That's the thing that's a little surprising to me. Gordo, we'll kick it to you, boss.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comment section right now, and I see Madsen having a lot of problems outside. And yeah, where I do see that, have you seen this man? This man is looking ripped recently. I forget who tweeted that earlier, but I saw it on my feed, and he looks good. Again, like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of my wrestlers. I'm a big fan of my ground game guys, and I have to lean him here. But it's been so hotly debated on Twitter that I've seen so many different takes. It kind of blinded my tape study because I was just seeing everything that people are saying. I'm just going to pass on this completely. I think that Madsen is the side here, but the word of the fight is cardio. Cardio is everything, and that is something that Clay Guida has in his back pocket that Madsen does not. I think that the first round and a half, that Madsen's going to look like the Olympian that he is, right? Silver medalist for a reason. He's good at what he does. But you're right. Clay Guida does push a pace that other people don't, and he's able to come around in that third round and look good. And that's why that plus 2100 sprinkle is so live, is because he's able to do what he has to still in round 3, where Madsen's not going to be able to do the same thing he does in round 1. So I am going to lead Madsen. I think he is the better fighter in terms of skills, but those skills go away with no cardio. And I think cardio, that's why cardio is one of the most important things in fighting, is because if you don't have it, everything's out the window in that third round, right? So I'm going to pick Madsen. I am staying away from a betting perspective. I think that if you're looking to be a DraftKings player this weekend, that one of the good pay-up options, in my opinion, is Madsen, just because he is going to land the control time. He is going to get those takedowns the first 2 rounds, hopefully enough to gather enough points for his potential round 3 breakdown, right? So I think that he has a really high floor, just not as high ceiling as other fighters this fight weekend. So I am liking Madsen. I'm scared, though. I'll tell you that for a fact. So anyone with those round 3 sprinkles, I'm not hating them at all.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, guys, I normally don't hit you over the head with this. I try to be diligent about that. But if you have not already, please go ahead and like this video. Please go ahead and get subscribed to the channel. Each and every time there is a UFC event, I will be here breaking it down with a great panel of guests. And I really appreciate when you guys tune in. And all you people that are first timers here, thank you so much. People that have been coming back and checking it out, man, I really appreciate you guys. It means a lot to me. So thank you guys, everybody, for checking it out. We will pass right along to the main event of the evening as we exit this fight. We'll just say on the way out, Mbaye asks, does Madsen have good BJJ? He can submit Guida. I don't think he has the most incredible BJJ. It's not bad. He's a competent grappler. He's just got a hell of a squeeze. And so if he catches Clay in a vulnerable position, he's so strong that somebody who's a credible wrestler like that can just guillotine the hell out of somebody. But the other thing is, man, Clay Guida is one of them team alpha male guys, pretty tricky, pretty crafty, hard to submit those guys by and large. So that would be my thoughts on his BJJ. But I would say, Madsen's going to have an overall grappling advantage, but for how long? Because his cardio is the real question. And ABC say always bet on cardio as far as I'm concerned. But we will move right along to the main event. Gordo, did you have something on the way out?
Yeah, the main event with the grappling too is, whereas Guida is pretty tricky, I wouldn't want Madsen going for submission if he doesn't locked up completely, just because he will tire his arms out even more. And like we're saying, cardio is everything in this fight. So if he does get that squeeze going and he isn't able to finish Guida, it just tires him out earlier. So I think he does have the potential to finish him here, but that's not what I'd be banking on if I am betting Marco Madsen.
Mm-hmm. This event could literally be called UFC age gap. I feel like that is what they booked in terms of fights for this card, like trying to sort out if somebody's a real contender or not. We've got in this fight, Jared, the Killer Gorilla Cannonier, and Kelvin KG Gastelum. Man, this is a fun fight. Two guys who are kind of looking for that bounce back, that thing that will leap them to the top of the title picture once again, after pretty resounding defeats at the hands of Bobby Knuckles. And I think that this is a really fun fight. I think that middleweight has been having a couple opportunities to showcase the division recently. I'm hoping that this is going to be a better showcase of the division than the Hall and Strickland fight turned out to be. And man, I think that this should be pretty fun, but it's also a fight that I've had a hard time getting a read on, boys. I've been looking into it pretty thoroughly and not coming away convicted on a side. I think my initial lean was Jared Cannonier, about 60%. Market's been holding Jared Cannonier about 60%, and so I haven't felt like I had much to add. I initially was looking at that fight doesn't go to decision at minus 115 as being a pretty decent spot. But my concern is just that Kelvin doesn't carry a tremendous amount of power. He hasn't really been knocking out his contemporaries at age level and things like that. But Jared Cannonier has a significantly worse chin statistically than Kelvin Gastelum. Granted, he was knocked out by southpaws at heavyweight and light heavyweight, not at the middleweight division, but he was rocked all over the place by Robert Whitaker his last time out as well. So it's been a interesting fight week, man. Lots of crazy talk surrounding this fight too. Jared Cannonier talking about the judges robbed me in that Robert Whitaker fight, which is absolutely insanity. But Z, I'm going to kick it to you first, man. Break it down for us. How do you feel about this main event?
So main event, it's a competitive fight, man. I wouldn't put it past Kelvin to win, but when I'm really thinking about it, like Jared probably has more power. Kelvin's super durable. Kelvin's pretty quick. He does play a pretty advanced striking game, a lot of feints and push pulls. But Whitaker, it was awesome doing the tape on this fight because Whitaker is just a treat to watch, isn't he? He's just such an expert, such a high level fighter. Really dismantled both of these men. But as far as a betting perspective, I mean, this is going to be 5 rounds striking. Both guys are they're potent finishers. Maybe Kelvin not so much, but I mean that left hand is lethal. So to be honest, it's kind of a quick breakdown, but I just don't really have any interest in betting this fight. I did think about betting the under because it's middleweights, 5 rounds. It's a pretty close line. I think that could be something, but I don't know. I really think it's just a tough fight to call. You got Cannonier has the reach. He's definitely a good striker too. So it's not like, it's not like I think Kelvin's going to go in here and win handedly. I just think we're in for a really good, entertaining fight. Probably going to be pretty high paced. So again, betting perspective, I would lean with the doesn't go or the under 4.5. But maybe you could take Kelvin as a dog too. But honestly, it's just not a fight I have a strong lean on. But it is going to be very, very entertaining.
I think I've seen some pretty interesting takes. I want to say that it was Danny Lags, at Lags the Capper, if you guys are looking. I believe he was the one that pointed out 4-5 decision for Kelvin Gastelum. I think that that's a very good look if you want to back the Gastelum side because Kelvin, again, he doesn't carry that tremendous power, but he might be able to finish Cannonier as the fight goes down the stretch, whether that's with an opportunistic choke if Cannonier starts to tire or if, if we have Cannonier again slip on a banana peel, get caught with one of those hard shots, he has been knocked out by southpaws before. But I do think that the durability he showed over the course of 3 rounds against Robert Whittaker means that it's probably going to take till rounds 4 or 5 or till the decision for Kelvin to get a win in this spot. But, I think that it's probably, if you're looking for a person to put Kelvin out, a person to be the first man to knock out Kelvin Gastelum, you're probably going to draft somebody like Jared Cannonier who could blast him with leg kicks, keep him in place, and then try and hit him with a bomb. And if there's one criticism of Kelvin, he gets into striking exchanges, right? He doesn't land and snipe and go. He doesn't hit and make you miss. He normally gets into prolonged exchanges where he can get cracked on the counter. And, granted, he's only been knocked down by Israel Adesanya. That's a pretty good person to get knocked down by, all things considered. And it was a 5-round fight. But I could see something similar manifesting here where he's just been beaten up over the course of the fight. I think everybody's talking about Jared's going to slow down and that he's never gone 5 rounds. I believe he did once go 5 rounds on the regional scene. Granted, I think it was up at light heavyweight, but it's something that everybody's been talking about, but I'm not sure that it's accurate. And, Jared, while he carries a lot of muscle, he might be able to get to some rest positions in this fight. Whether that be pushing against the cage or whatever. My only concern is just that he gives up control time from the top position. Haven't seen a ton of it at middleweight. Granted, he absolutely stuffed those takedowns from Jack Hermanson and made them look like non-opportunities. And so that's what made me question. I'm like, man, how do you get a read on this? Because we've got a 170-pound frame in the Kelvin Gastelum side, like literally undersized on average for UFC middleweights. And then we have somebody who would have fit in just fine at light heavyweight in Jared Cannonier, who probably only went down because he got ran in there with the upper end of the division, lost to Blachowicz and Reyes. So, man, this is a compelling fight, but a tricky one from a betting perspective. Gordo, how do you feel, man?
Yeah, the big thing here is the size. Like, you look at it from the just on paper, and you see how much bigger Cannonier is and the level of competition he's fought up at those higher divisions. And you think that a guy like Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who shouldn't even be at 185 in the first place, you think this is Cannonier's fight. Then you look at it from this way: if they're the same size, I would take Kelvin Gastelum in this fight. I think that if they were like I said, same size, you take him here, because the problem that Gastelum's going to have is he's not going to be able to wrestle him the same way he would. He's not going to be able to throw people around. He's not going to be able to get any sort of size advantage because the discrepancy is so big, right? So the big thing I have here, though, is we know the chin of Gastelum. And like you said, if anyone's going to knock him out, it is going to be Cannonier. But I'm not going to bank on that because I've never seen Kelvin Gastelum be knocked out. So I'm not going to bank on someone to knock him out, right? That's the thing. So if you look at it that way, isn't
he
that
arguably got knocked out by Izzy, but I do hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
That fight was qualified for stoppage.
Yeah, exactly. So I know, but again, I wouldn't. Izzy versus Cannonier, that's a completely different fight, right? Their styles are completely different, so I wouldn't look too much into that. But you look at Gastelum, you got to think like there is a decent path to victory to him, right? So it's one of these ones where, as a dog, I'm not minding him at all here. I think that he's able to hold his own if he doesn't get clipped, and if his chin does hold up, he's going to be able to throw out some volume, do the same thing he did to Ian Heinisch, just maybe not as well, because obviously Jared Cannonier is a big dude, right? So you look at Kelvin Gastelum, you look at his frame, and you say, okay, what does he have to do? Well, he's got to get rid of that power. He's got to get rid of those leg kicks. He's got to take away everything like that. And the way he does that is probably on the ground, because I think Kelvin Gastelum does hold the edge on the ground. But 2 things: he's able to get him there with the size, and he's able to keep him there with the size. Everything has to do with size this week, and that's the problem. Is I'm not going to bank on Cannonier finishing, and I'm not going to bank on Gastelum wrestling him the whole time. So what do I have to bet on this week? It's one of these ones where I don't have a solid read. Probably going to stay away. But if I had to pick one, I lean more to Gastelum decision in this side. Don't know if it's that bold, but I think that's probably the most likely outcome for both fighters, really, because I don't see him knocking him out. I don't really see Kelvin as that potent of a finisher, especially if a guy, Cannonier, has been there with much heavier hands. So if Kelvin is able to land those grappling exchanges, if he is able to take him down, maybe he lives up to that plus 290 decision prop, but it's not something I really want to be banking on. It's one of those ones where no solid read, no action for me as of yet, but I'm really excited to see how it plans out.
Absolutely. And with that, It's been just under 90 minutes. We still got 15 of you guys rocking with us, and we appreciate each and every one of you guys for doing so. I appreciate my two guests today at Z's MMA, at GordoGambles. Thank you guys both very much for coming on the show. Before we get out of here, boys, I'm going to kick it over to each and every one of you, give you guys an opportunity to plug. Where can the people find you, and anything else that you've got to get off your chest? Z, we'll kick it to you first, my man.
I'll go first.
I'll leave you in suspense. I'll just let you guys fight it out amongst yourselves over there.
Yeah, you guys can find me at Z's MMA on YouTube and Twitter. Always down to talk fights, always from a betting perspective. I'm actually live right now on my channel. That's why you saw me talking. I wasn't talking to myself, but I got some PFL action, so I wanted to get that going. So, yeah, if you guys are interested, hop on over there. And once again, just Z's MMA on Twitter and YouTube. Also tracked. My bets are tracked on BetMMA.Tips under Z's MMA or Rockstar Z. So it's us versus the bookies, boys. Thanks for having me on, Liam. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Wanted to shout out, as we do each and every time here on the show, the Odds Mug, the greatest receptacle for barbecues, tailgates, fairs, and festivals. I'm kidding, of course. Boys, really appreciate you guys coming on. Z, thank you very much, as always, for the insight. And I just got to say, the hardest working man in all of betting content. The man is on 2 live streams at once. Where have you ever seen this kind of technological advance before? Gordo, kicking it to you, my man. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, my friend. It's been a pleasure talking fights with you guys. Canadian Takeover. Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend of fights. I'm looking forward to it. If you guys want to find me, GordoGambles on Twitter. I'm always talking fights, doing a ton of sports there too. Looking forward to NFL there. Got some MLB action tonight as well. Also started a brand new YouTube, only a month in the making, with my buddy. He edits the videos very, very well. So go check them out at Plays and Fade Sports. It's in my bio, my Twitter. Go check that out right there. Lots of UFC content for you guys. We got a DFS video out tomorrow for you guys as well. Maybe might even do a live stream with Liam. A little spoiler alert. So if you guys want to come check out the channel, Z's, you're more than welcome to come on that as well. I'll DM you about it after. But yeah, new in the game, but happy to meet you guys. So pleasure having you. I'm very thankful to have you invite me onto this show. So thank you very much, my friend.
Man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have the two of you guys on today. And yeah, guys, tune in tomorrow. I'm going to be doing that stream with Gordo, probably around 5:30. Go follow him and tune in. I will be retweeting that as well. You could find me everywhere at LiamPicksFights. You know that each and every week we will be back here. It is the good guys. That's us. That's Z. That's Gordo. And it's you versus those bookies each and every week. So we appreciate you guys when you tune in. Thank you very much for dropping a like, for subscribing to the channel. We always appreciate when you do. And until next time, God bless you all. Enjoy those fights, and we will see you next time. Let's cash those bets, boys.